Einhorn's in the building.
Hey guys, good to see you again.
It's good to see you again, my friend. How are you?
It looks like you got a couple more tattoos since I last spoke to you a couple weeks ago.
It always looks like that I always get more tattoos, but in fact, I took one off. No, I didn't.
Yeah, look, I got my wife just walked in, brought me some fresh coffee. Come here and say hi.
Oh, we got the wife.
Come on. She's coming. You're coming around. Hold on. She wants. It's a little shy, but a little gun.
That's okay. We eliminate shyness. Hi.
Hello. Good morning.
You're awesome. Your husband's awesome.
So real quick, not sure how much you heard previously before you got on, Dom, but Steve was telling us about our superpowers and how we're able to capitalize on them and make them lucrative things. If you want to go back on that real quick, Steve.
Yeah, did you hear anything about that, Dom?
What's up, Dom? How are you today? You're muted, Dom.
You're muted, buddy. You're muted.
Gavin's having fun. Gavin's messing around.
Yeah.
I just got out of we own the local rugby team, so I just stepped up right now. Did not catch what you guys were previously discussing.
Well, Steve was talking about, by the way, Steve Kopshaw, Dom Einhorn, Steve Kopshaw.
Good morning, Dom.
And Steve was talking about our superpowers and turning those into monetary or something. Steve can explain it better. Go for it, Steve.
Dom, I was just bringing up the fact that I think a lot of people have a superpower that they may or may not be aware of. And that's a really good spot to start when trying to think about how to monetize some of your skills. Usually your superpower is something that you learn easy, doesn't tire out as much. You can work on for endless hours, and it never really feels like work.
I agree. I think, I never use the term superpower to describe what you're talking about. I usually talk about our inner passions. And when I go through hiring processes internally here at Unicorn, one of the very first questions I ask people when I interview is, what would you be doing if you didn't get paid for it? And then I watch very, very closely for the response, because ultimately people will then start sharing their passion. And the last thing I want you to do when you come into my organization is to do something you don't like, because you're not going to be proficient with it. You're going to throw in the towel very, very quickly. But if you actually feed on that passion, and I'm able to actually transcend that passion into a spot into my organization, which is what I like to try to do every single day, that's when you get the best in terms of productivity and where people are actually happy in terms of what they're doing. When they get up in the morning, they actually know that they're contributing towards something that's bigger than themselves, and ultimately you feel that in the bottom line as well as a business.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And that's I've heard a couple of people take that similar question, and it comes down to, let's say it wasn't about the money, you had all the money in the world and you didn't need any more money for the rest of your life. What's the one thing you would be working on at that point in time? And it all comes down to finding and doing what you like.
I think that's actually, yeah, sorry, Sonny, go ahead.
And I think Gavin and Brandon and I have answered that question. What would we be doing if we weren't getting paid for it?
The same
because
thing.
This is what we're passionate about right here. Yeah. We're passionate about talking with people, networking, motivating and inspiring people every day. And that's what we do, because we don't get paid for it. But we're trying to figure out how to get paid for that. We're trying to figure out how to take this passion of ours that we're doing anyway, regardless of getting paid. And how do we turn that into something? And that's why I love having guests like Dom and Steve Kopshaw, because you guys are businessmen who have taken startup ideas and ventures and turned them into a business. And I think one of the cool aspects of this show is that everybody knows the goal here. So they're kind of watching it and going along with us as we progress through this goal.
I think it's a good point. I think what it reminds me of is when I first started as a digital marketer in 1993, 1994. And people were telling me from all walks of life I should be getting a real job. Not today. I can tell them the same thing. They were telling me that the internet. First, it was the information superhighway for a couple of years. That the internet was nothing but a fad, and it wouldn't be around anymore, right? And I actually came up very early on with my own rule, which is basically a rule of failure versus success, and I call it the rule of 36/1. because it took me 36 live conversations with a potential customer to close one deal. And I sold that business for 8 figures, a few years later. And, the interesting thing, the moral of the story is I was failing 95 to 98% of the time, right? Trying to sell ice to Eskimos in a time we were selling websites, not existing websites. We were building the websites and selling them to B2B clients in a time where people said, what's a website? And why would I ever need such a thing? Right. So it wasn't really easy. So that's the proof that, I'm not a baseball fan, but if you're a batter in baseball, you're missing a lot more balls than you're hitting.
That's true.
Michael Jordan famously said that, I was voted the best basketball player in the history of the game, yet I failed more shots than I made. And what I think, what we've kind of lost today is this ability to fail and the willingness to fail and the understanding that failure is nothing but a stepping stone to success. Unless you actually embrace failure, you're never actually going to succeed. So, when the famous guy who invented the light bulb, was asked, why he succeeded where so many others had failed, his answer was simple. Right. He ran out of things that didn't work. Right. So I failed so many times that finally something had to work. Right.
I believe Dr. Seuss was rejected a huge amount of times before he was finally able to get his book published.
Jack Ma, Alibaba, was rejected by every major university in the world.
Now, Steve, you've had experience with several different businesses as well, right?
Yeah, and Dom, what you're saying there, I don't know. Do you guys know Tom Bilyeu, the founder, and he used to own Quest Bar, Quest Nutrition?
I know the company. Yeah, I don't know the founder.
So he sold that company, I'm guessing a tad bit here, but say 4 years ago for $1 billion. And when he started out, he was just this kid that had a dream, and he tells the whole story about his girlfriend and what is now his father-in-law and all these things. But what he relates failure to is, we're all humans, we're all sensitive in our own right in certain ways, but that also gets in our way. And Dom, what you're highlighting is going out and failing isn't actually failing like a negative. It really comes down to a data point. And what Tom said to me that was just one of those powerful things is, think of a computer, think of artificial intelligence. We program this computer and it starts doing its thing. And let's say we're going to play a game of chess with this computer. You are going to beat the computer the first time you play chess, because the game, other than knowing the rules, the computer, other than knowing the rules, has no idea how to win. It just knows the rules. But it's going to go out and it's going to move one of its pieces, and it's going to be wrong, and it's going to learn, I shouldn't do that again, and do it and repeatedly do that. And within 10 minutes, you are never going to be able to beat that computer. If humans had the same tenacity as the computer, and yes, there's speed and there's a bunch of other layers to it, I get that, but tenacity to say, let me get a new data point, let me learn something new, let me learn what not to do again, we could all become all-stars at everything we do. Instead, at the end of the day, we get upset. We had a really bad day. We go drink a little bit too much and we drown in our sorrows instead of going, man, I learned a new skill today. And
we have one chromosome that computers don't have, and that's called emotion. If you take emotions out of the spectrum, I'm not saying we should, because that's what makes us humans, right? But when it actually comes to making rational decisions, don't try to make rational decisions with your gut. It still remains the brain that takes those decisions.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah.
So what would you advise someone who is in a position like, say, Gavin and I, and Brandon, with these small companies that we've launched and we built? What's the next move when you feel like you're plateauing on something? What's the next move? What's the next thing you do when you're like, okay, we've hit this level? What do we do next? Because you don't know. Like, we are dreamers at the end of the day. We've thrown ourselves into this thing that we're passionate about, but we don't know the ins and outs of it. We don't know all the fine points, and you kind of get stuck at a spot where you're like, now what? What do we do?
I think, if I may answer, and then let Steve answer as well, I think first and foremost, you got to capitalize on what makes you strong, capitalize on your strengths, which is to produce great content and to engage at the deep level with the audience, and then figure out how to grow that audience. Once you know how to grow the audience, monetization, there's a million ways to monetize.
Right. And he just spoke on the key of it. That one little spot that you went through. We have deep engagement with our audience. How to expand the audience. That's where we get.
That's where our issue's at.
Yeah.
Expanding.
How do we expand? Because we have such a great group of loyal followers, and we add a couple every once in a while. We add a new person pops in every once in a while. And I genuinely believe the people that are still here are here because they enjoy the content. They feel that interaction with us, like Recat, Asa Maria, Mr. B, Page Monster. Like we've come to know these people on more than just they're a viewer, we're a podcast host level. You know, we know these people. You know, we know some of the things that go on in their life because we also cultivate the air of bring your problems here and we'll help you work through them together. We'll make your problem a focal point on our show and we'll talk about it and we'll get a bunch of advice from a bunch of different perspectives and help people work through things. And I think that that's something that really grasps audience. But how do we expand that at scale? How do we scale that?
Sorry, Steve, go ahead.
Oh, you're good, Dom. So I guess my question back is, what have you done to try to expand and scale and grow? Like, other than hoping and wishing, what are the literal and direct actions you've done to cause that change or cause that impact?
And that's a great point, because I found something out last night, because as we all know, I'm not very technologically advanced, but I'm learning as I go. I found out last night, I came down, I sat, and I realized that my phone for some reason sucks. So when somebody messages like the Sonny Von Cleveland public figure page, I don't see it here. And I don't really check Facebook on my computer. I did last night. And I see you have a ton of messages here on all these pages from people that have tuned into the shows, Rock 101, The Morning Brew, all this. And I'm like, I didn't even know these messages were here. And
including one from me from way back then.
Yes. And then I realized, wait a minute, I can share this episode into a group on Facebook of people that are podcasters, that like podcasts. Let me drop this into that group, and instantly you get another sub.
See, I think from my perspective, what I'm seeing is I see a group of obviously clearly passionate people who are able to connect at the deep level with stakeholders who are loyal, which I would call brand ambassadors. They're the ambassadors of the Morning Brew. What you need to growth hack, right? So you need to find someone on your team that is a growth hacker, or bring that person in who has done it before, who understands exactly, who is philosophically and ethically aligned with who you are at the core, who can actually take that to the next level. I have some people internally here that could help you with this, for example. I'm not pitching what we do, but you need somebody like that.
You should still pitch what you do.
Well, we're the customer acquisition business for 25 years. So I've done this at scale for a large amount of products, large amounts of services, anywhere from financial services to rugby and beyond, right? But again, you're doing the right thing, and that's the reason why your message resonates with the people who are loyal to you. If you have currently 100 loyal people, there is no reason why you would not have 100,000 of them. Right? But you have to be able to hack into that next level. And that requires some out-of-the-box thinking, some creative approaches. By definition, people, especially podcasters, tend to put you inside of a box. I guess this guy is more like a lifestyle guy. This guy is more like a business/tech guy, et cetera, et cetera. It's hard to think outside of the box if you believe you think you're living in a box, right? What I like about your concept is, look, you're basically able to popularize very difficult to grasp concepts for a lot of people. Last time we spoke about AI, we talked about augmented reality, virtual reality. And you're showing that, you mentioned it yourself 5 minutes ago, I'm not a savvy technologist, right? But I got news for you, 99% of the people out there are not. and they can relate more to you than can relate to me. So if you're bringing people in that are like-minded and actually understand that, look, we have a communication problem here, right, that we need to resolve, this podcast could very much become the conduit that will bring those two stakeholders together. So for example, I would basically brand the podcast in a way as, which topics are you currently challenged with? Right? Do you have trouble with, for example, understanding what Bitcoin is and how Bitcoin works, which 99% of people will say yes, right? Well, let's bring in the guy that is not an egghead, that can actually properly communicate what Bitcoin is, what it does, why it's here, and where it's going. And that's, if you can do that, you're going to get the buy-in. First of all, your actual current constituents, your stakeholders, will stick around forever. And then you can actually leverage on those. Each one of those could become your mini growth hackers that will rally their own network, who will then rally their own network, etc. I've yet to find a single podcast that does this.
I need to do this. What you're saying right now,
you're the right guy to do it, dude. I mean, come on. First time we met, look, this guy's got to be a rocker or something, right? So a musician, clearly, right? Just because of the aura, but at the same time, you start talking, you're already very embracing dude, right? So you already have the DNA. It's embedded in your DNA. In other words, you carry this authenticity, which carries across. And Gavin, your sidekick, same thing, with a different spin on it, right?
Except when he does that.
He's frozen. He's doing it on purpose right now. The screen is not frozen.
Oh, that's yeah. Really quick, I'm curious. One thing that
there you go.
He's a great rapper too.
We have yet to do, I think, just about. God damn it! All right, am I back? All right.
There you are. While you're fixing your internet there, like certain things that I would think of, Sonny, on a tech side, and I know a guy that can help on the tech side if you're not tech savvy, but like you got to think in bits and pieces, and how do you get to the big picture, and what's something that the audience is willing to do, able to do, and how do you provide some value in return for them potentially doing these things, actions, whatever it may be, right?
Right.
The hope and a dream strategy isn't going to, I mean, there's a rare scenario where that ends up working out, I suppose, but generally speaking, it doesn't. So something like a simple social sharing campaign where, take, for example, you guys just did on Sunday night, the comedy night. So, hey, we're going to raffle off 10 free tickets for this. And the way you win is by earning some points by sharing the show. And just go out, and I'm going to give you something you want, tickets to the show, and then I'm going to ask you to do something I want, which is share this whole thing out there. And this is a piece of the puzzle, right? It can't be the entire picture, but that is a direct, actionable item where you can have the ability to say, can you do this for me? And in return, I'll do that for you. Because as humans, we need to continue to build that margin. We need a relationship. We need to know I'm not doing something for nothing. But on top of it, kind of as Dom pointed out, there's a relationship built already. So naturally speaking, if you make an ask, you're likely going to get people to take action.
Well, see, that's the weird part. Like, I'll put out a post or something, and I'll get a ton of engagement. But then I'll put out a link and say, hey, share this up for me. And I'll get 3 people, 2 people. Like,
let me tell you why.
What are they getting?
Let me tell you why that is. You're, as I mentioned, a very authentic guy. You look edgy, but you have to become even more edgy. What I mean by that is that rule number 1 of PR is be different. Right now, to me, you look different than the average guy, clearly. But you're not that much different yet in terms of the content you're actually producing. Aside from it being very, very authentic, it has to be edgier, right? So what we say in PR is that dog bites man, that's not news. Man bites dog, that's news. So you want to be the man that bites the dog. How are you gonna do that? Right,
like Steve. I'm gonna just pop up one day on Steve's when he's doing something, just bite him. Like,
look, we all talk to tons of people every single day, and I have yet, going back to me not finding a podcast that actually resolves this problem, because in my opinion, you have no point being in business unless you resolve a problem, right? And sometimes what we're seeing today are people that tend to create the problem that they eventually want to resolve, which is absolutely asinine, right? But in your scenario, if you position yourself, it's all about proper positioning in the marketplace. If you have 1.4 million podcasts or whatever the number today is, the last thing you want to be is like the next guy to you, or a Me Too, all right, that gets categorized, put in the box. You really want to stand out. I have yet to see a single podcast that does what you guys can do between you and Gavin very, very well, which is to say, look, guys, today we have a guest on this show about a topic we understand nothing about, but this guest is going to clear it all up for us, okay? And I think with that, you would actually, you're on to really, really something that will resonate with millions of people without you changing or deviating from your true north and from your core, which you never want to do, because you want to be out there and be who you are today and say, you know, guys, holy cow, you know, what's this clean tech deal? How does the smart flower actually work? And when you actually do that, very often you'll be able to tap directly into sponsorship, not only because of size of the audience, because you're actually showing that, look, at least what I believe is we're in this world to actually solve problems. I have a binary mind, right? Problems and solutions, right? Where you actually are part of that process. And the big problem that we have today is that the majority of the people are vastly disconnected from what's going on in the world because it's just moving too fast. So if you can bridge that gap between the tiny majority who really, really know what's going on and the vast majority that's utterly disconnected and ready to throw in the towel, you're really onto something big.
Yeah.
I like it, and you make some good points. Gavin, you wanted to say something before your internet started messing you up. What was you?
Let's see if it'll allow me to get this out really quick. One thing that we haven't done that I think would really help, and I believe the reason why we haven't quite done it yet is just because we aren't 100% sure on what to write for the quote-unquote script of it to put it out there, is shooting a little commercial to show people who we are and what we do and be able to share that around quickly. Because one of the things that everybody knows is we are a very, very big and wide as far as our topics go. You know, we have some people that come on and we're extremely immature and we joke around, and you know, some people are drinking a little bit. We have people who come on where it's very, very serious or it's very intellectual. Like we go all over the scale.
Just coffee.
Yeah, we go all over the scale as far as topics are. So it's kind of difficult to just show that in a set post and advertising. So I think shooting like a little commercial between like 15 to 30 seconds, like a little montage of what happens on the show, would be a really great way for people to share that around and show them what we are about over here.
I like it.
Gavin, I think you're right there. And the one thing I'll highlight through it is you want to do it, you should do it, but you're not really sure what to do is kind of what you said, which is why you haven't done it. You're not gonna know what to do the first go around. Yeah. But if you go and do it, you'll learn from it. Like my main podcast that I have, the first intro is gone already because it wasn't the right intro. My next intro is already gone, and the one I'm on now, we're already planning to get rid of again because it continues to evolve as we do things. But again, in the understanding data points, you go and you learn. So for us, my buddy and I, who've known each other for 10 years, it's the Average Entrepreneur's Podcast. And it is about the chaotic life that an entrepreneur faces dealing with family and kids and business and work and clients and having fun and trying to go and enjoy, like all of the things. And we go down these crazy rabbit holes, and like, we're not afraid to go down politics road. We're not afraid to do anything. We are honest and authentic through it. But through that, the intro, the way we host the show has changed over the short time we've done it. So just go and do and learn from that. And every time you also make a commercial or you make the video, the landing page, the whatever, the audio clip, you're going to reach out to a certain subset of people that are interested in learning or understanding the thing or being involved. And then when you twist it, you'll get the next subset of people, and twist it again in this next subset of people. Now, don't twist at the risk of losing your identity, because now you're not being consistent, but twist to make sure you continue to improve upon some of the deficiencies that you have.
And I just want to point out that for anybody that's watching, this can be attributed to your life as well, whatever you're doing, because I know we have another podcaster in here that's watching the show now. So I want you all to garner some information from this. This is kind of like a tutorial class right now for anybody that's getting into this game or whatever it is that's in your life, because these men right here are both successful entrepreneurs. And taking the advice that these men give, you're not taking it from somebody like us who's saying, here's how you be successful as an entrepreneur, as we're both struggling to pay the rent. You take it from these guys who have been successful in it. So as we're approaching the top of the hour, because we have an expanded session with both of you today, Dom, why don't you go ahead, for the people that may not have been here with you last time, and for Steve, explain what your company is and what you do, and then we'll have Steve do the same thing so that you two can kind of feed off of each other. And I think it can become more informative that way over the next hour.
Sure. So I'm Dom Einhorn. I'm half French, half German, born and raised in France, in the Alsace-Lorraine region, the famous region in the northeast of France that was fought back and forth between France and Germany and changed hands 5 times between 1870 and 1944. In the early 90s, I moved to the US. I spent 25 years on the West Coast, in Los Angeles in particular. I built a number of startups, some of which I exited, others that failed. In 2018, I moved back to France with the intent to start what has become the largest incubator and accelerator of tech startups in a rural space, in a rural area. Tuning in from the southwest of France, a small city called Sarlat. That's Sarlat, a medieval town that has 9,000 souls in the winter, 2.5 million tourists in the summer. And we have 11 startups right now under our wing, 8 of which in-house, the other 3 that are being incubated remotely. And we're about to expand across the street into roughly 40,000 square feet of space, with the idea of bringing in 50 plus startups over the next 18 months.
Nice.
So there's that.
I'm always intrigued by the startup space and going down that road. That's amazing, Dom.
Thank you.
And then Steve, go ahead and for those who don't know, explain what you do.
Serially entrepreneur, have been mainly within the brick and mortar service retail business, and went from owning the businesses to now consulting the businesses, typically on a franchise level where it's 1 to 250 locations, and helping with their marketing strategy, sales strategy, employee strategy, and things through there, as well as finding unique and creative ways to expand their reach and help impact their customers at this point in time. So good example is I work with a health and wellness nutrition coaching company right now. They have just shy of 200 locations across the US, and we just kicked off their e-commerce store and starting to sell through there to help expand their reach just outside of their brick and mortar walls, because of obvious reasons. It's hard to get as many people through the doors these days. And we're having a pretty successful 2021 so far, if I say. So
Cool. Very good.
How do we solve problems and then move on? What's the next biggest problem we can solve?
See, I like that. And now having 2 of you guys together, somebody's going to benefit from this conversation.
I already did. I'm totally in.
Right. Likewise. And actually, it's funny because I think where we're aligned, Sonny, you and I, is on our end, what we try to do today, because I started up as a startup entrepreneur and I spent the bulk of my life doing that. And then over the last 6 to 8 years, I've slowly morphed into more of an angel investor. Is what really gets me going today is my ability of actually building an ecosystem that lends support to young startup entrepreneurs from around the world. We're roughly, on the general project management side, we're roughly 30 people inside of Unicorn right now, hailing from 18 different countries. Sorry, 19, because there's a Croatian guy that joined us yesterday.
Oh.
Mostly, actually, majority female, which is almost unheard of in the tech space. And that was not by design. So a lot of people will tell you, okay, diversity, BS, very politically incorrect when it comes to that. I think that if anybody tells
incorrect around here for the record.
Right. But I'm gonna measure what I say. But basically, I think it's human nature that if somebody tells us we absolutely need to do something, that we're going to shy away from that. I'm not going to do it. At least that's how I feel. Right. I don't want to be told what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm not 3 years old anymore. And what we discovered is that if you actually play your cards right, and the chips just tend to fall into place. And by definition, no matter how many smart people you have inside of your organization, there's always somebody smarter outside of the organization. So I'm very, very different from the average entrepreneur in that space, where I don't believe in boxes. I don't believe in titles on business cards. I still take out the trash. Right? If only by way of showing the other guys that's the way what you should be doing as well. You just basically pitch in wherever you can, and I think maybe it's old school, but I think that one of the biggest differences you see today in business, in particular in the tech space, is that it's become so easy, so cheap to create a new company that anyone can launch it. In particular, people who shouldn't be in business. And as a result of that, because back then when I started, unless you raised $500,000 or $1 million, you had no point being in business. You were out within 3 weeks. In 1998, my average monthly bandwidth bill was $8,000 US, and I used 1,000 times less bandwidth than today. Wow. Steve just mentioned e-commerce. In between 1999 and 2001, when we got big time into e-commerce, in order to have a database, there was one kid in the block. His name is Oracle, the big monster. It would cost us $32,000 per instance to run SQL. And we had 5 instances running, 5 server instances at any given time. So there was immediately $160,000 up front just for databases that today are free, right? Wow. So what you're seeing, if you've seen over the last 25 years, a massive democratization and massive demonetization of the process. Now today, the kid in Kenya with a smartphone can launch a business. But that doesn't mean that it's a business that they should be launching, right? Because the risk is a lot lower. The barrier of entries have completely fallen by the wayside. And what you're seeing as a result are tons of vanity businesses. People that just, you've heard about the meme economy, that are just launching the business for the sake of launching a business. And as I mentioned earlier, they're creating the problem that they ultimately intend to resolve, right? I got news for you. There are plenty of problems that are still here today that we should be resolving as entrepreneurs. And for those of you who want to be billionaires, no problem. I give you the perfect recipe. Help 1 billion people.
Facts. Help 1 billion people, and 1 billion people will give you $1, and then you've become a billionaire.
Or more than likely 100-fold.
Right. And that's such sound advice. What do you think the biggest block is to people actually putting that into motion?
I would say, and then again, somewhat politically incorrect to start with, from my experience, I'm speaking empirically, not backed by science, but with 25 years of hindsight, I can tell you that roughly 5% of people have what it takes to be an entrepreneur. And then you have 30 to 50% that claim they do, but they don't have it. And what you got to realize, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. We need teachers, we need athletes, we need musicians, we need painters, we need plumbers, we need everybody else, right? Yeah. It takes a special kind. You have to be somewhat crazy, as Steve Jobs mentioned, the crazies, to become an entrepreneur. Because you got to be willing to get knocked down and keep getting back up. You have to be willing to risk everything and lose everything and stick through thick and thin and actually stay on the trajectory without getting depressed. You have to be able to look at all your best friends in the face and say, what you're doing is stupid, and say, no, it's not. I'm going to continue and stick with it, et cetera, et cetera. And there are very, very few people that can actually stomach this and stick with it, right? It's roughly 5%. It may be even slightly lower than that. But as a result of it being so easy today to create a business, everybody wants to be the next billionaire businessman. And a lot of people have no business being in business, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, I think today, and Dom, you mentioned certain things, and I wasn't owning a business back in 2000, but the cost to start a business today is like 99% cheaper, cheaper. The ease to get it. I mean, back 15, 20 years ago, to build a website took a lot of hours and time and money and everything else, whereas now you can have a website running in a day. I mean, before we got on, I mentioned, hey, I have one of the pieces to add into my consulting side is, oh, you're running a virtual summit. I can help you with that. And I have a page up and running in 8 hours where people can land, grab some information, and find how to contact me for those things. And it is really easy, but there's also the Googles, the Bings, the Yahoos, all of the internet, all of the information out there. Everybody believes they are a professional. They believe they are the most intelligent person in the world. And they're not humble enough to realize, man, I have so much more to learn or so much more to go. They position themselves as an expert, and they go out and they don't do anybody justice because they really don't know a damn thing. Because I think most of knowing comes from experience, comes from failure, comes from understanding that, hey, I didn't do that, it didn't work, how else can I do it? And that's where the ability to solve a problem really is born from. Like,
to your point, Steve, it's funny you mentioned the keyword expert, which is probably one of my most hated keywords. Every time I get an invite from a guy on LinkedIn that it says expert, because let's keep in mind that he wrote that about himself, right? Yeah. Unless he is independently wealthy and he hires people, a PR firm, to actually produce that LinkedIn account, I delete it without even looking at it because he's a self-proclaimed expert, right? If you're truly an expert in any field, you realize that the more you know, the less you know, right? There's so much more to know, and you would never call yourself an expert, right? Unless you're boxed into this linear thinking where you say, there is a ceiling to my knowledge and I have reached it. That's like Karl Malone talking about himself in the third person back in the days.
I mean, that's kind of where I'm at with what I'm doing. Like, I mean, I know my ceiling. I know where I'm at with my talent level is, my skill set is put me on camera. I can entertain, I can talk, I can draw crowds, I can keep people interested. That's my limit. So I'm constantly breaking through that ceiling like, oh, I didn't know I knew how to do this, or I didn't know I could do that. So I'm learning something new every time, and having conversations with men like yourself starts to show me, oh, I didn't know I could do that, and I can do that as well. I think that jumping scared is something that people should do, because it's terrifying to say, okay, I'm going to put my entire life on the line right now and risk everything to jump into this venture. But that's what I've done. I don't have a fallback plan. Denzel Washington is like one of my idols in this and on this earth, and I don't have many idols. Denzel Washington's one of them. And one of his famous speeches, I don't have a fallback plan because I don't plan on falling back. I don't have a fallback plan. I want to fall forward. And so I jump into this. But I also notice that I tend to get into several other projects as well, because I then start to maybe panic. I don't want to use the wrong word, but I tend to I analyze a lot, and I stress out like, okay, while I'm headlong into this project, bills are still coming. So I still have to do something in order to pay bills. So then I'll jump into another project with the prospect of an immediate payout, which doesn't have an immediate payout once you get into it, but now I'm involved in it and I'm not going to pull out of it. So then that's another one. And then here comes another one. It's like, now I have 5 projects on my plate and I'm getting spread thin. None of them are maximizing to the level I want them to. And I'm tapped out as far as my knowledge and how to expand them. Now,
that's the leaky hose syndrome.
What is it?
The leaky hose syndrome. If you want to
leaky hose
water your garden, the first thing you want to do when we've all had a leaky hose, we're going to patch it up. We're going to put duct tape around it, right? You need some duct tape, buddy, so that you can actually shoot your wad into one direction instead of going a little bit everywhere. That is absolutely critical in terms of being able, because I read you as somewhat a little bit ADD. Yet most of the successful people, I'm being politically correct only with you, Yet most of the successful people in this world are ADD in some shape or form, right? What you need to do is you need to surround yourself. You're right now a 2-person team. You may need to be a 3 or 4-person people team.
Yeah, we do have Brandon. He's just on vacation.
I know. I met him last time.
Right.
Yeah.
So one thing, Sonny, on that, and it's interesting. There's always this debate, right? And I think there's 2 core groups or 2 schools of thought. Do one thing, focus on that thing until it reaches where it needs to, and then move on to the next thing when it comes to business. And, the moment you divert attention, you can't put all your attention into that one thing. And then there's the subset of people who are, you should work on a lot of things. It'll keep you engaged and it'll do this and all that. And my personal opinion is that neither school of thought is correct in a sense. You should have an overall arching umbrella of theme, things that you're working on. If businesses fit under the umbrella, I think you can have multiple, because you should theoretically be solving a problem that could probably scale across multiple businesses. Now, if you're going to go out and run this retail store and then try to be the best podcaster in the world and then try to host sporting events and then try to do this thing, well, maybe there's no crossover there, and you're not able to triplicate whatever it might be efforts to go and grow. So you got to find, I think, that big umbrella piece and then go from there. And again, I think there's people out there that would disagree with that mindset as well, but you need to be able to manage it all, stay engaged. To Dom's point again, the ADD side of things. I know I get bored after doing something straight for 2 hours, and I can move on to my next project, but that next project will still solve some of the problems in my first project.
I like that a lot. One thing my mother would tell me growing up, because I was always like to have a lot on my plate, and I was very busy all the time with a variety of different things. Nothing seemed to make sense, and I still do that now. But she would always tell me is you can be mediocre at a lot of things, or you can be great at a couple of things. And what I sort of took that in is now, like, I still do a lot of things, but I've sort of focused them into entertainment aspects is what I've been doing. So doing things like the Morning Brew show here, I can advertise that. And then that has been able to cross over, because then people who watch this will then go check out my band when it's brought up, and it goes funnels into that. And then also I got hired into PMTM Modeling and Talent Agency. That's still very, very new in the works, but I know as I continue through that, that'll have more people who will come to then watch this, who will come to check out the band, who will come and do whatever other things that I decide to do. I also do the DJing. I do DJing for karaoke nights at local bars, and that's a way that I get people to come and watch this and then also come and check out the band. So I think the big takeaway from this is find other things like Sonny, how you do have that ADHD thing where you want to do a million projects, figure out a way to focus on them when you're doing them, but also funnel them into one or two main things. Like for me, the podcast and the band are the main things that I sort of funnel those other side projects into.
I think one of my biggest strengths is that I'm able to identify my problems, and I'm very open about those, and I'm very overcritical of myself. So telling myself my problem isn't the problem. I pack a lot on my plate because it keeps my mind off of the bullshit in my life, and I won't focus on the bullshit. And this is kind of it's kind of an offshoot of the habit that I've built while being in the penitentiary. I would overload myself with stuff to do so I don't have to think about being in the penitentiary. I don't have to think about the dramatic stuff that's happening with my family or anything in my life. And I think that's a bad habit that I need to break away from, because I find myself doing the same thing here, because, I'm going through a custody struggle with my son. I'm going through a bad breakup with a crazy woman that likes to, try to torment me. So to keep that stuff off of my mind, I will throw a million things on my plate. So, because I'd rather stress about that than that.
So So I got to start wrapping up, everybody, and start getting out of here. But my final comments before I run here, and I apologize. I wish I could hang out more, but I only.
No, you're good, brother. You stayed your time.
But one thing I will say with that is keeping in mind you need to measure what's going on, and if you add something into your life that is negatively impacting from whatever the goal, the measurement is, that performance indicator that you're leveraging, all of a sudden it is a distraction. And there are very logical ways to understand if that's causing a negative impact or still helping you move that forward. The other piece of it is we all have some level of attention to give, but you can only give all of your attention to one thing at a time. And we need to be very decisive and straightforward. And I'm focusing and I'm going to accomplish this thing. Maybe accomplishing it is only moving at 10% to the ultimate goal, but I can do that and then move on to that next task. Going out there and pretending to do 10 things at once at the same time, as much as I think some of us think we're maybe good at it, and I'm sure there's people that appear better than others, I think go out, find it, focus on it, and make sure it's not hurting what the overall goal is. So, but Dom, hey man, it was really nice to meet you. I shot you a connection request on LinkedIn, and maybe our paths will cross in the future.
I think they should.
Likes to think outside the box. I'd be more than happy to come and lend a hand and have some fun sometime, and I'm sure I could learn from you. Sonny, Gavin, I'll see you guys next week.
Steve, it's been a pleasure. I'm going to actually reach out to you, Steve, and have a conversation with you later on this week.
Sounds good.
I appreciate your time, my friends. Pleasure as always.
Good meeting you, Steve.
One comment. Take care, Steve. One comment that I thought that I had when you were talking.
And he freezes. Just hang in there, Dom. Dom, I'd love to have a conversation with you after the show as well, Dom, if I can get just a minute of your time. And as soon as Gavin gets over his Mr. Freeze thing, we'll see where he's going with it. Are we back?
I hope so. So you said that you like to pile up yourself so that way you can keep distracted from the bigger things that are bothering you in life, which makes a lot of sense. That's the thing a lot of people do. I've done it in the past. But so the things that you're trying to avoid, or I guess forget for a little bit, like the custody battle and the bad breakup, when you're avoiding them or when you're not thinking about them, or if you are thinking about them, is anything really happening? So it's a custody battle that takes a long time. So if you sit there and you stress out about it, nothing's going to happen. If you sit there and you distract yourself with something, nothing's going to happen with it. It's stagnant until you have your hearings or your whatever you got to do, the next step in that process. So
mine only took 18 years, so that's the good news.
Yeah, right. That's how my mother was with my birth father. It was a lot of time in court.
Speaking to that, it seems like that's forever, but that is not that long.
No,
you know what I mean. If you look at it in the macro as opposed to looking at the micro, 7 years is nothing, and yet it's everything. Like you can change your entire life in 7 years. You can go from being piss poor broke to being on top of the world in 7 years.
Yeah.
And yet we look at it like, I can't wait 7 years. I don't have that much time. You know what I mean? People think that. Dom, have you ever ran into that in your line of work? Have you ever ran into that impatience process where it's, that if you just stay the course, that this thing is going to mature into something great, but the interim just messes with your mind?
Before I met you, I always thought I was the most impatient man in the world. Now I know we got more than one thing in common. I'm very glad. I think I look at patience as a virtue, right? Because people are impatient for a reason. Let's not forget that, because they want to make shit happen, right?
Right.
So unless you're, and I see the comment right now from Bridget, Your life can change in a single day. Very powerful comment.
Yeah.
You know, what I usually say is that today is the beginning of the rest of your life, right? So forget about what happened in the past. We can all come up with excuses and make them up. In some cases, they're warranted or not warranted. Look, people that come to you with their baggage, sorry for you guys. I got my own, right?
Right.
You know, so they have a tendency of actually infringing on your life, acting like they're the only ones with problems, right? So going back to impatience, you know, 100% share your feeling, and that's where also the ADD comes in, right? When you're an impatient person, you're typically highly motivated, and you're very dissatisfied with the status quo, right? Hence the ability to move mountains, and you want to move mountains, and everything that's in your way of moving those mountains is an obstacle that needs to be removed systematically. And I agree 100%. It's what I do every single day. In the south of France, you know, that it's more laid back, et cetera, et cetera. You know, it's very, very difficult to do this. I'm not putting up with it, right? Even though I am French. I just refuse to. Some people will actually say, you know, this is just the way it is. Well, I got news for you, right? If that's the case, I'm not subscribing to that, right? And I don't like the status quo. And I think any entrepreneur, any true blue entrepreneur is there to actually change the status quo and make this world a better place and have an impact, yourselves included. So impatience is a virtue that basically it's an indicator that you're not satisfied with where you currently are, either in your personal life or in your business journey or in your athlete journey. If you take an athlete, a young athlete who's impatient, he's going the extra mile because he wants to make it to the big leagues. And that's actually what it takes. That's called progress.
Yeah.
Anything besides that is patience. Sorry, I'm not a patient guy. Neither are you. And I look at that as a quality, not an inconvenience.
Right. I look at my impatience as a strength. I try to look at it as a strength and say, okay, I know I can take on more than the average person. I know that about myself. Like I work well in chaos. I've identified that about myself because self-awareness is key to success in everything. You have to know who you are, know what you can handle. But I also, in that line of thinking, will overload myself to the point where I'm like, okay, I know I can handle a lot, but I probably took on a little too much. And then at the same time, I have this freaking dire thing about me that I hate to let somebody down.
Yeah.
And it's perfectly fine to take on too much. What's not fine is to take on too little. Right? So going to your point earlier, and it's a point that Steve made. I mean, you can always do less, right? No question. But that's going back to what makes people different and stand out from the crowd is to go the extra mile. I frankly don't have any patience, for lack of a better term, to deal with people who are not willing to go the extra mile, because what I'm trying to do in my life is I try to build extraordinary things. And by definition, I cannot do that with ordinary effort and ordinary people.
Facts.
Yeah. And then to clarify, because I think you two are talking a very, very slightly different conversation with one another. When Dom, when you say take on, you want to take on as much as you can, if not too much. You mean like the same thing. And Sonny, I think that's one of the issues that you're having is prioritizing, because you're taking on so much, but it's all different things. And you're getting spread out between all these different topics.
There has to be uniformity in the things that you're taking on. Do you think that's true, Dom?
I think I agree. And I think I have the solution to your problem. You want to hear it?
Yes.
So, because nobody's ever going to tell you, Sonny, you're only going to do that. That's not going to happen. I can see that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? So embrace that. Embrace that. You know that, look, I don't care what everybody's going to say. I'm going to snap back. This is who I am. This is my DNA. This is what makes me authentic. I'm interested in a lot of things, and I want to move stuff around. It may be messy at times, but this is who I am. Right? So how do you turn that to your benefit? Very, very simply. You now have a business, this podcast, where you're just being blunt about it. I have a lot of interests. I'm a very impatient person, as many of you are as well. And the guiding line behind this mess will become your podcast, because now you can bring in people. You can share. You're obviously not going to talk about the same topic every single day because you have many, many topics you'd like to talk about. But that guiding line, I think, is to say, look, this is me, the authentic guy. I have either no understanding whatsoever about this topic. I may have a little bit, or if you're a musician, you know an awful lot more than me, okay? Somewhere in between, but we're opening this up to the rest of the world so that we can actually solve a problem. What is the problem? The problem is that most people in this world they're not specialists in any specific topic, but they'd like to learn more about a specific topic. And that's where you come in. You basically make it simple. You bring on specialists in a specific field, and you basically get them up to speed. I don't care what it is. You can bring a neuroscientist, a brain surgeon in, because I'm not a brain surgeon either. I'd listen to this guy. But the only reason why I would listen to this guy, if you were talking on an academic channel with another neuroscientist, I would never listen to him because I'm lost, right?
Yeah.
But if Sonny speaks to him and he's asking him questions, the same questions that I would have, and the guy is actually able to communicate down to that level, to the lowest common denominator, I'll listen to it all day long.
All right. And that makes sense. And I think that is one of the attractions here is that I find people, well, I don't find people, Ferran finds people, but we find people and guests here that are in fields that we have no idea about. So we bring them on and we try to learn their field and learn things about them. And I think a lot of people do appreciate that. I mean, we have a very loyal fan base of people that tune in every day. And I think they appreciate seeing all these different walks of life, because I also think that as human beings, we have an infinite capacity to learn. And you can find something interesting in just about every single walk of life if you just take the time to converse about it and listen.
Absolutely. But then you got to think, so the way that, like, there we go, found my train of thought, sorry about that. Going back to organizing yourself and carrying that huge load on your shoulders, but making sure that you're putting that energy in the right spot. Think of it like you have experience, you have time, and that is, you have a limited amount of it in your life. Now you can apply that to 15 different things and get it spread out really thin, kind of similar to what you're doing now, what I've definitely done in the past, spreading out our time really thin.
And there he goes. Every time he gets on a roll with something good. It definitely, and look, he was on a roll too. He was in something good.
I'll finish a sentence in the meantime.
There we go. All right.
Go ahead, Gavin. You're back. You're back.
We were just, I don't know if you were hearing us, Gavin.
No,
but
I was. So you have time, you have a limited amount of time, you have a limited amount of experience, and you extend that, or you spread it out through various activities, or you take that time and that experience, you say, all right, I'm going to put this much aside specifically for this. And you're investing. It's like with stocks, Sonny, how we were teaching you about that. You know, you're investing your money, you're investing your time in a couple specific that you know you want to do, that you know that you'll be successful in, instead of every little thing that interests you, every little thing that catches your eye, because then you end up not knowing really much of anything.
Right.
Yeah.
No, you can be a jack of all trades, master of none. There's a reason why this saying exists, right?
Right.
It's because many people behave like that. And it's normal, because if you're a curious person, as fortunately a lot of us are, we're not just interested in one topic and we want to touch a lot of things, and that's perfectly fine. It's perfectly human, right?
Yeah.
Is it the right thing to do if you want to be an ultimate performer? Probably not, because you have to build this ability over time, which I certainly didn't grow up with, to say no. So that if I look back 25 years back, probably the biggest mistake I did in my life is I just kept saying yes, 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 including when I was thinking no. Taking on way too many projects, a lot of crappy projects, people eating up my bandwidth, etc. And today, the only thing I'm doing different is I say no 9 times out of 10, right? So I've kind of like built this radar of, I get a guy, as I mentioned earlier, who says he's an expert at something, a self-proclaimed expert. I don't even spend a second on that guy. He's already off my list, right? So you have to be able to triage when you're actually doing this, because yes, going back to the leaky hose syndrome, as I call it, right? Yeah. There's only so much energy that we have to expand, and we want to make sure that energy goes into one or two directions. But with a guy like Sonny in particular, because he tends to be all over the place, and I mean this in a good way, you need to have this guiding light, right? What brings all of this together, right? I have a lot of interests. I want to talk about this. I want to do this and this and this and this. I would say, because I can't change you, do it, but follow this major guideline. Since you're a podcaster already, talk about all these topics that are actually driving you as a human being, because that's what makes you engaging. Don't leave that by the wayside. That's your authenticity. That's who describes Sonny today, right? And that's actually how you can actually eventually get 5-10 million listeners, all of which are like, they recognize themselves in you guys. That's like, wow, this is us, right? And we're also asking ourselves these questions all day long. And Sonny is the only guy that actually brings specialists in any specific field to his show and solves this problem that we all have. I think that's the guiding principle.
I like it. I think there's just a couple of small pieces that we can put into place that'll really help. I want to address Recat real quick. 8X Nation's baby is kind of like our daughter, our collective daughter around here. She's I think she's like 15, a young girl, and I know that we confused you. The cult thing, Recat, was more of a joke than anything, but that's where she got lost. But we it's never a bad thing to ask questions, and I think that she got a little lost here, thinking that it would be bad to ask a question. There's no such thing as a bad question. Always ask questions, and sometimes we're going to get into a little bit more advanced topics that younger people may not understand, but you can still take away something from it, Recat, and don't ever be afraid or embarrassed or ashamed to ask a question.
There are no bad questions, just bad answers.
Right. The only bad question is the one that's never asked. Always ask questions and fire away. So Dom, tell us what's coming up in your life since we last talked to you. What's been new, and tell us what some of the. You just said you added a Croatian individual to the team. Tell us a little bit about what's going on in Dom's business in Unicorn.
I just picked him up yesterday. So he is he's got the dual competency. He's a professional rugby player, and he's also very strong in sales. So we're expanding on our business development team. He's 23 years old, absolutely driven. You like fire coming out of his eyes when I interviewed him remotely initially. And I'm like, when you want to come over? He said, I'm packing my bags as I'm speaking to you. In 10 minutes, my bags will be ready. He had never been to France, or he at one point in time had been to Paris for a quick visit with his parents. And literally 3 days later, I picked him up. Today, he did his first training along with the boys at the gym during lunchtime. Weightlifting. He's also a professional strength coach. He's got a master's degree in as a strength coach and in athletic conditioning. We basically, during COVID, we tripled our staff. I think that what we're seeing today is COVID is being used as probably the best excuse ever to not move and not do anything. When in fact, if you're looking at the history of mankind, it's during these times that every time there's a downturn, that's when the biggest business models are being solved. I think for those of you who are listening today, I can understand some people being depressed. I cannot do this, I cannot do that. Well, that happens to me too. I haven't had a beer in probably 6 or 8 months in a local bar, right? They're all closed.
Sucks.
Yeah, it sucks. You can't socialize, you have to wear 3 condoms and 2 masks when you see your friends. It's not ideal, to say the least. But at the same time, if you take a step back and you look at this as an opportunity to build for the world after, and you're really, and I'm going to give you my take on it right now. If COVID had been around for 2 months and then disappeared, we would have just snapped back and behaved like we did before. It would have just been a blip on the radar. But that crap's been around for a year and it's going to be around for a little bit longer. Vaccines are not. Because we've been living with it for so long, we had to fundamentally change our habits as human beings. And as a result, we've rewired our brains, whether we wanted it or not. We have become different human beings. Case in point, I'm going to take one singular example. My parents, who are in their 80s, always been tech adverse in their entire life, right? I don't want to touch this. I'm scared. I don't know anything about computing, et cetera, et cetera. Well, today my mom is on Facebook. She's doing Skype. She's done a couple of Zoom calls, et cetera. And it's actually very, very empowering. oh my God, I was afraid of this stuff all my life, and I can actually master it. I actually know how to use it, and I can actually connect, even though virtually, with people I haven't seen in a long time, right? I have clients that are in their 60s, 70s that used to travel back and forth once a week between LA and New York that told me, Dom, I will never, maybe once or twice a year, I will fly back to New York. I'm so much more efficient. I never believed I could actually do that. And it's only because they were not given the choice, right? Sometimes not having a choice, we're looking at this as a chore right now, okay? So if you're looking at not having a beer with buddies and whatnot, but maybe it's a good time to actually get in shape and to worry about your health, right? Yeah. Take a step back, turn the lemons into lemonade, right?
Correct.
And if you're an entrepreneur, there's never been a better time to actually focus on the world after. Yes, it takes an education. It takes an investment of time and resources to actually understand what's really going on, what that world is going to look like. I don't have a crystal ball, nobody does, but you can actually pretty much see it already. Instead of trying to predict the future, look at what's already there. We already know that people are going to be traveling less, for one, right? Out of fear, number one, and people realize, heck, what the hell was I doing? Even myself, I was traveling 300 days out of the year for 17 years. I'm never going to do that again in my life, because I've just now, again, ingrained new habits, and I realize I can do a lot more. I have a lot more freedom by actually staying at home, doing conferences via Zoom, G-Meet, Microsoft Teams, or who knows what. And that's here to stay. That is a mega trend. That is not happening tomorrow. It's happening as we speak during COVID. If you look at certain industries, AR, VR, exploding right now as a result of COVID, right? Yeah, if you look at Disney Plus just announced their new subscribers. They went in 6 months from 0 to 146 million subscribers. Why? A big part of it is due to COVID.
They already had a built-in fan base for Disney.
Sure.
So anything that Disney puts out, Disney could put out a new something, and it's automatically going to grab tens of millions of people.
But it would have maybe gone from 0 to 50 million, not a 0 from 150 million, right?
And true, because the Morning Brew is a result of COVID. My YouTube, everything that we have here, the fact that Dom and I are talking right now is a result of COVID, because I saw the opportunity when COVID hit and shut everything else down, that this is an opportunity. And we wanted to bring, because I also know that with COVID, the world is going to be stuck in this depressive funk with a whole bunch of negativity and bullshit. And I wanted to bring a light of positivity somewhere where we can all take the time to learn by meeting new people, learn their profession, learn the fields that they're in, and find these gems amongst all the dust from the ashes of this volcano that is COVID. And that's kind of where this all came from. You know what I mean?
I think, at the end, we're actually connecting at a deeper level. If you and I had met, I could have been in a bar or something. We could have talked about sports or whatnot, or something that doesn't even matter, the weather, right?
Right.
And instead, we're talking about AI, we're talking about augmented reality, and who knows what, right?
Right. And I mean, who would have thought that these paths would have crossed? You're in France. We're in America. It would have probably never happened if it wasn't for COVID. And You never know the results of something coming. You're the first repeat guest that we've ever had on the Morning Brew. I'm huge. I'm into signs. I'm huge into fate. I'm huge into karma. I believe everything happens for a reason, and nothing is unintentional. And I believe that what separates the people that are successful in life in these endeavors and the people that fail are the people that recognize that every instance that we have is an opportunity. You know what I mean? To recognize the fact that I'm going to take away something from my relationship with Dom Einhorn, no matter what. I mean, I already have, but I'm going to continue. And I hope that Dom continued and has taken something away from our relationship. Just like Gavin and I, our relationship, we have garnered something out of it. You know what I mean? So when you approach these scenarios and these situations from the perspective of, I'm going to take something away from this, I think that propels you towards success even more.
And I think, we're talking obviously semantics here, because I think the term, I'm going to take something away from this, is actually a negative term because it means a minus. When in fact, what we're doing here is 1 + 1 = 3. right? Someone out there is actually getting some benefit out of that as well, who then will pass it along to someone else, et cetera, et cetera. So a takeaway is almost like a takeout. It's been taken from me and I'm walking away with it. This is exactly the opposite, right? So I think it's a virtual circle that if you add value, we're basically open sourcing information, and we're actually improving the circulation of that information by actually having a reciprocal relationship where you add value, I bring in value, Gavin brings in value, people chime in, bring in value, people that post questions, which I think good or bad questions, there's no such thing as a bad question, as Gavin mentioned, they add value because we actually need to hear those questions, because there are a million people out there who are asking themselves those exact same questions who are not raising their hand to ask them, right?
Right.
And I think that is a problem that you can solve with this. You know, if anybody is out there right now, when you actually have a guest on, whether myself or someone else who's a specialist in their own field, by all means, that is why you created this channel, to basically promote the free exchange, the free flow of these ideas and these concepts, and making sure that everybody can actually grasp and understand them.
Facts.
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Gavin.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's the awesome thing about what Sonny was saying too about like the takeaway. I know you said it has a negative connotation to it, but you can also apply that to anything in your life. That's something that's really gotten me through some sort of like difficult times, because I know that nothing is, forever. Everything will eventually have its end, but that's also adds a kind of beauty to it, because you allow yourself to be able to appreciate it while we still have it, and then learn from those experiences. Whether it is being on here in the Morning Brew every morning, learning and talking to all these new people and figuring out these new things, or if it's a job that so I've decided to go from one place to another for work, or a relationship that has either started or ended, whatever it is in life, you've learned to grow from these experiences. And instead of looking at a negative way of, oh, that sucks that ended, you think, wow, that's amazing that started.
I couldn't agree more. I think, look, every one of us in this world, we're all specialists in a field, right? We're not all natural-born communicators, and I'm not the same way we're not all natural-born entrepreneurs, as we discussed earlier, right? But we all have something to add to the mix. Sometimes that's a question, and that question can bring up solutions. That question can bring up additional feedback from people. Even if we don't have the answer to the question, we can actually reach out to a network and grow that network organically by people who are willing to contribute, because as human beings, we are willing to contribute. Everybody is willing to contribute, and at least most people, the overwhelming majority of people in this world, are authentic people who are actually, investing time, resources, and money to make this world a better place. And this is one way to do it.
I do believe that. I do believe that naturally, the majority of people in the world are good, because in most people's eyes, they believe that they are the hero. Everybody likes to think that they are the good guy in the story, and they are doing something for the greater good. It's very rare that you find somebody that is just pure evil for the sake of being evil.
Yeah, I don't know that I believe that there are necessarily inherently evil people in the world. I think everybody has an inherent desire to do good. And like you said, I think most people feel like they're contributing positively to the world around them. But there are people that also are good people that don't think that they're contributing to the world around them. And that's one of the things I like to try to focus on with what we do in this platform, is that everybody has value. Every single person on the earth has value. Yeah. And being recognized for your value, I think, does so much for somebody's self-esteem. And that's something that I try to cultivate here. Like, I love talking with Dom Einhorn. Like, we're not talking about Dom's profession at all today. Last time he was here, we were talking about artificial intelligence and algorithms and computer systems and entrepreneurship. And today we're just talking on a more intimate level about life and its processes and things like that. And I think that that's something unique and special to this show.
I agree. I think we all need to build the ability to connect at different levels, right? One-track minds, it's good to have them. We need them as well, because you need some extreme minds that are just hyper specialized in a specific field. Otherwise, we would have never gotten to the moon, right? Yeah. So you need those people, but you also need generalists. You need people who can actually communicate on multiple levels, understand people from different walks of life, have an open mind, because that's who we are as human beings, or at least that's what I hope who we are as human beings, being able to relate. We can talk across the screen, but it's like we're all sitting in the same room and discussing a topic. For some of us, we're doing it in multiple languages. I mean, I grew up at the dinner table where we were addressing different people in 3, 4, 5 different languages, talking about the same topic, right? And it's interesting on that level, because there are studies that are out there right now that show that if you speak more than one language, when I speak French, actually, I adopt a different personality. I actually feel it. I always thought something was different until I actually read the scientific literature that says your brain fires a completely different way, and you're now actually becoming a different person. When I speak German, it's the same thing. When I speak Alsatian, my native dialect, it's the same thing. You actually
code switching.
Yeah, 100%.
I never thought about that. That's interesting.
That shows how deeply we are basically shaped by a language, because obviously, our life revolves around it. Our entire human identity is built around language, from language acquisition at a very early stage.
I wonder if that also applies to like accents, because I do accents as more of an entertaining thing, but I can do multiple accents.
Right. So, for example, why do you think, let's say, a couple Texans get together and they understand the Southern drawl and they speak the same language and you instantly connect? Because it's the identity. Because Texas is not a state; it's a country, as we all know. Right. So Texas is the largest country in the U.S.
Right.
Yeah.
It definitely
from Alaska, maybe.
And I think I never thought about that. See, this is exactly what I'm talking about. That little gem right there that we just acquired on makes that's what I'm talking about. And I
completely understand it too. Like when I was serving. And this thing I do in general, but I did it mostly when I was serving tables, is I would code switch all the time between different customers that I had. I would ask them, I do my little spiel in the beginning, hi, my name, can I get you something to drink? And then I listened to how they would talk. And I would very slightly start to mimic and imitate it. If they had like a Southern accent, if they had more of a New York kind of thing to them, if they were foreign, I'd have like ever so slightly to the point where it wasn't extremely obvious, but it would be a subconscious thing. And then with some people too, with certain friend groups I have, I'll code switch completely and I'll think differently, I'll talk differently, I'll use different slang, different accents. But I've noticed the way that I process things is completely different. The way that I handle problems and situations, the way I go about carrying myself, my posture will change.
Yeah, but for example, if you don't think that language shapes your mind and your identity, see how difficult it is for people to eliminate an accent that they grew up with.
Right.
It's like shedding skin, right? You have to become a different person. That's how difficult it is, right? Yeah. It's virtually impossible. You have to be professionally trained for years, like an actor, to be able to do that, right? Otherwise, no chance. Everybody's going to always say, "Wow, you're from the South, right?" And it's funny because you can say the same thing in France, in Germany, in most countries in Europe. The guys from the South have a Southern drawl. Like for example, here where I am at in French, the word bread is le pain. In the south of France, it's le pain, right? Pain, pain. Right? No, it's almost like a different world. Sometimes I say, "Can you turn on the subtitles, please?" Because I'm getting a little lost here.
Yeah. It's more like an accent. Well, listen, I think this has been such a great and informative show, man. I totally love it. This is what I live for, man, is coming in here and meeting and expanding our knowledge together. It's great. We're going to go ahead and run into our last words. We've got a little bit of time. And then, Dom, after the show, I'd like to have a conversation with you.
I have a quick call after this, but I'll reconnect right after with you.
I like it. I do have a live show at noon, so if we can get it in before noon, that would be perfect.
Just ping me after I drop off, and I'll jump on as soon as I can.
You got it.